Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for coming for this important press conference that we have annually to introduce the new president of CII and the new president designate. We have with us Mr. Sumit Mazumder. He is the chairman and managing director of TIL Limited and took over as the president of CII on 7th April. As TIL is the manufacturer of India's largest range of material handling equipment in technical collaboration with some of the world leading companies. They are also tied up with Caterpillar in terms of the dealership in US, in India and Nepal, as also Bhutan for earth-moving construction, mining equipment and power systems. He has been a member of CII's various committees for many years. He's been involved in CII for the last 15 years, and he's been the Eastern Region Chairman. He's headed capital goods, construction equipment, capital goods committees within CII. Has been a very strong leader in the CII's work in manufacturing. And he has also been serving as a trustee of the Kolkata Port Trust and is a director in the board of the West Bengal Industrial Development Corporation, which is the WIBDC. So I have also the pleasure of introducing you to Dr. Naushad Forbes, the president designate of CII, who also took this chair on 7th April last. Dr. Forbes is the director of Forbes Marshall, India's leading steam engineering and control instrumentation firm. He chairs the steam engineering companies within the group. He also has been a lecturer and consulting professor at Stanford University in the program in Science, Technology and Society from 87 to 2004. And he has been very well involved in CII in the areas of technology, innovation, education, and he has led these chairs and committees within CII. Dr. Forbes is also in the advisory board and advisory council of IIT Bombay Board of Directors of Godrej Industries, Kirloskar Engines and Jump Associates, California. Governing Council also of the National Institute of Design and the Indian Design Council, trustee of the Ruby Hall Clinic in Pune. He has, as I mentioned, been in CII in various forums, chairing them. He's been a chairman of the Maharashtra Council and thereafter the CII West Region Council. So he has also been with CII for quite a long time. So, ladies and gentlemen, the way we have structured it, we will have the President CII to make his presentation on as he sees the year. Thereafter, we will open it up for your discussions and questions with him. So may I now invite Mr. Sumit Mazumder, the CII President.
Thank you, Chandrajit. A very good morning to each one of you. Let me now add my own welcome to my friends from the media. I'd like to thank each one of you for being here this afternoon, rather. Sorry. Some of you may know, all of you may not know that we've just returned from a very successful trip to Europe. I was in Hanover, where the Prime Minister once again worked his magic on the investors. He was also in France, which went off excellently well. And he's currently, of course, as you know, is in Canada, and you've been seeing what's going on over there. The India story is now widely appreciated, especially the concerted action on the policy front. This is very important. I expect foreign investors to vote with their feet, making India one of the key investment destinations in the world. Let me begin with some important news on economy and on reforms. Since coming into power in May 2014, the government, we believe, has adopted several measures to reinvigorate investor interest and generate positive sentiment about the Indian economy. It is not just sentiments and mood, but there are key results on the ground, as we see from these reforms captured in the slide. I'll move to slide 4. To attract investments, in the country, the government has relaxed overseas investment norms. We've heard about the FDIs in sectors like railways, defense, construction, and medical devices. Similarly, FDI cap in defense and insurance has been increased, while the railway sector has been opened for foreign investment. The measures taken will make it attractive for the foreign companies to set up manufacturing facilities in the sectors and support employment generation, which is very key for our country. Coming now to slide number 5, this deals with the regulatory environment. Members of the media would know that to enhance India's investment attractiveness and improve India's ranking in World Bank on ease of doing business, and this is talked about very frequently nowadays, the government has taken a number of steps for easing the regulatory environment in India. Some major milestones I'd like to talk about in this regard have been the launch of e-Biz portal, launch of the web portal online for filing and monitoring of environment and forest clearances, launch of Shram Suvidha portal for filing self-certified single online return by industry for 16 central labor laws, etc. Recently, the government has constituted an expert committee to examine the possibility of replacing multiple prior permissions with pre-existing regulatory mechanism, and so on. These are obviously initiatives which makes doing business a lot easier, and this is very welcome. Moving to slide 6, in the recently concluded visit to France and Germany, which I just talked about a little while ago, one has seen a high degree of appreciation for the announcements pertaining to the tax system in India, which is being put in place by the new government. The spirit of simple, non-adversarial and investor-friendly tax system is being appreciated by industry, both in India and abroad. On slide 7, the allocation of natural resources has been a contentious issue for a while. In the last 3 quarters, the government has done a commendable job of allocation and pricing in the areas of coal, gas, and other minerals. My friends from the media will know that in India, the issue of allocation and pricing of natural resources has always been a matter of great debate and has had diverse views, many views. The complexity of the issues involved have often deterred governments from taking decision in such matters. In that context, the speed with which the government has moved and taken decisions is really truly commendable. In cases like coal allocation, it has also helped in dealing with stalemate kind of situations. On the next slide, it clearly outlines the government has been astute in the management of the economy, especially the fiscal side. The fiscal deficit has been brought down so that the interest rates can moderate. On slide 9, the trade policy front, we have seen the new foreign trade policy giving a clear direction and strategy for encouraging Indian exports and also ways of promoting paperless trade. This is very critical. Industry has taken note of the 2 new schemes, merchandise exports from India scheme and service export from India scheme. One of the most commendable features of the foreign trade policy is that the number of mandatory documents, and please note mandatory documents required for exports and imports has been reduced to just 3, which is comparable to the international way of doing business. I'll move to slide 10 now, which is kind of busy. Friends, coming to the global scenario, it is evident that the global economy remains soft. A strong recovery seems to be elusive in the developed and both in the developing world. We do see some recovery in the US. Euro area is showing some signs of growth. However, China and Japan continue to be matters of concern. Rates of growth are not as strong as previously expected, despite the global fall in crude oil prices, which is really a little strange, with the IMF projecting reduced prospects for potential output growth across economies. The strong monetary stimulus being provided by central banks of Europe, Japan, and China, while US will probably delay its interest rate hike. The commodity prices, including oil, as I mentioned, remain low. Impact on India has been a significant moderation in input and output prices, softening of both exports and imports, and continuing risk appetite in financial markets. I'll move to slide 11. Even as the global environment remains soft, India is currently the fastest growing economy, with 7.4% growth in the last year, that's 2014-15. Both IMF and World Bank expect India to outpace China in starting 2015, that's this year. CII expects the GDP growth in the range of 7.8 to 8.2% during this fiscal year. RBI's projection is 7.8%, while Economic Survey projects 8.1 to 8.5%. Industry will continue to recover, while services are expected to maintain their current pace of growth in 2015-16. Rating agency Moody's has raised India's rating outlook to positive on the back of a more conducive policy environment. Slide 12 talks about that in CII we believe the government has the right focus. It is, if it continues to work in the area we mentioned in the slide, a medium-term growth rate of 9 to 10% is very, very doable and possible and achievable. We believe that the focus has to be on Make in India, which has got a lot of publicity, which has got a lot of importance, and we all know the importance the Prime Minister lays on Make in India. And the labor-intensive service sector, because we realize that employment is a critical factor in our country, with the right kind of attention we need to give to skill development. It's not just a matter of job creation. The people must be skilled, the people must be trained to take the jobs up. We also believe that agriculture needs investment so that supply bottlenecks can be removed. Overall, there needs to be a renewed thrust on infrastructure creation. We did see a lot of activity in infrastructure. That seems to have tempered down a little now, so we need to see some action on infrastructure. Having said so, let me take you to some challenges which we prefer to see as opportunities. You know, there is that saying that behind every challenge lies an opportunity, and we like to think that these challenges can effectively be turned into an opportunity for the country. First, let me take up the most important issue, that's the issue of land. CII strongly supports the land ordinance, which will exempt projects in key sectors from mandatory consent requirements and social impact assessment. We do believe that the legislation is supportive of farmers who want to sell their land and receive good compensation. This will enable the government to facilitate building of rural infrastructure. CII also believes that the ordinance route has to be taken for quick decision making. CII is working with state governments and political parties on trying to get them on board on the land issue and to advocate its views that the land acquisition norms to be eased for greater industrialization to take place. So this is for the good of the overall good of the country, and CII is actively already working with the states and political parties. Industry has been experiencing obstacles in its compliance with some of the provisions of the Companies Act. I'm talking about Companies Act now, 2013, and its rules. According to CII submissions, some of the issues with respect to related party transactions, confidentiality in business, loans, fraud reporting, etc., are slated to be settled with notification of the Companies Amendment Bill 2014, which now is awaiting passage in the Rajya Sabha. CII will continue sustained advocacy efforts to ensure that the new regulatory framework is pro-industry. Many tranches of detailed inputs on the Act and rules are being submitted to the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. We've been very actively working with the Ministry on this. Some of the key issues that would include is exemptions that are required for private companies and closely held unlisted public companies. There are various other issues pertaining to related party transactions, CSR, etc., which need clarification in the form of notifications. Moving to slide 16, progress has been made in reforming labor laws, but much still needs to be done to simplify the laws. And this, of course, is not an easy one, but CII is again actively participating in working with the government in getting this through. For example, the flexibility of engaging and deployment of labor, the exit clause under the Industrial Disputes Act 1947 and Contract Labor Act, they really need urgent attention. Special labor laws are also required for reducing the compliance burden of the medium, small and micro enterprise sector. CII is working to promote responsible industrial labor engagement through regional pilot projects on engagement parameters with contract laborers. CII is also working on the training of trade union leaders to promote best practices in industrial relations. CII will lead tripartite dialogue process between government, industry, and labor. CII would be very actively involved in this initiative and would really work what is good for the industry and what is good for the country. Moving to slide 17, CII has taken the lead in the country to ingrain values of governance, accountability, transparency, ethics, compliance, and trust. We put a lot of importance on this, and we profess this throughout our membership. We are fostering a culture of good governance and building corporations of the future. Going forward, CII would set up a center of excellence on governance. As you know, we already have 9 centers of excellence. I would like to highlight that CII supports amendment in the Prevention of Corruption Act. This, we believe, is in the overall interest of decision making in the country. Slide 18, India needs to adopt the highest standards of corporate governance. I'm going to devote a little bit on the corporate governance. This will have to be done through initiating reforms in the regulatory framework as well as adopting voluntary practices. This will lead to overall improvement in business, environment, stepping up the nation's growth trajectory, and broad-based development. An enabling regulatory environment would help achieve a thriving corporate sector which attracts investment and improves productivity, creates jobs, and expands opportunities for the population of our country. CII has been a leader in this field, and we shall continue to provide direction in this field. Let me turn to slide 19 now, and this is about the theme of CII 2015-16. Build India, investment development. This is the theme, is the overall message. And the overall message, is of a shared responsibility in the theme for us for this year. In slide 20, we've got 12 enablers for the theme of CII. I'm not going to get into details of all 12. We'd be here for a long time then. Over the next few slides, I will mention some of the key recommendations of CII and some select initiatives that we are going to take in the course of the year for some of these enablers. As I mentioned, this is a bit of a busy slide. I just encourage you to take a quick glance at it so that we are together when I'm covering some of these with you. Moving to slide 21, when we go to the issue of promoting growth and competitiveness, we would like to highlight the key recommendation of CII, which includes fast-tracking central policies like the National Steel Policy, the National Policy on Capital Goods, the National Chemical Policy, the National Textile Policy, and so on. These are also necessary to provide this sectorial thrust in the overall direction that this has been given by the Make in India campaign. We are sure that these are on the anvil. We are actually working with the states on ease of doing business, movement to the states. At the central level, a significant amount of work has already been done. We see a healthy trend in the states, and the states are competing. Some of the states are competing well. I wouldn't say all the states are on board, but some of the states are definitely on board. Another important recommendation of CII is to create a single window platform for all regulatory issues pertaining to startups. I must mention here that in the course of the year, CII will set up a new center of excellence, its 10th one, which will be the Startup Center. This is a major initiative of CII to scale up the startup ecosystem in India, including incubation and hand-holding services. This would really add huge value to our member companies. To further the innovation agenda in India, CII will also be working to link up industry and academia cooperation. I will be talking about skills separately, but I would like to mention in this context that we would be setting up a strategic manufacturing sector skill council. I'll now move to slide 22. In the context of developing human capital, our recommendations are as follows. The upcoming education policy should deregulate and provide greater autonomy to higher education. The new national policy of skills should be announced. Guidelines for Apprenticeship Amendment Act should be issued. And in this direction, CII is working with the state governments in strengthening industry-academia collaborations. CII skill centers would be set up, and model career centers would also be set up in select cities. Now moving to slide 23, one of the key thrust areas for CII for the year is going to be infrastructure. And this is huge and this is important. And here I would like to make 4 key recommendations. First one being the treatment of the infrastructure sector with respect to non-performing assets. This is a problem that has been dodging the infrastructure sector, should be different from that accorded to the manufacturing sector. That's the first recommendation. The second one is, at par with global practices, the PPPs should have arrangements for renegotiation under an empowered institutional mechanism. Third one being, government should award projects to private sector only after first the government must secure the key sovereign clearances. This is the government's responsibility and they must do that. For the fourth one being, as announced by the Honorable Finance Minister in his budget speech, contemporary PPP contracts should be balanced to meet the requirements of the private and public sector stakeholders, and suitable liquidated damages against sovereign promises should be stipulated. This has been a big problem in the past. Getting clearances were inordinately delayed, resulting in huge cost overruns, project cost overruns. So there has to be a mechanism for compensating the contractors. The fourth bucket of our area of work is encouraging social development. And in this, let me first mention the area of women and child development. As you can see from the slide, I need hardly mention why India and Indian industry must pay attention in this area. CII would extend full support to the Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao. We shall also launch the Indian Women's Network nationally. Engage CII members, CSR projects in empowering women through the CII Foundation for CSR, among other initiatives. Going to the next slide, this is the other big area where India needs a lot of intervention by the government and CII, we believe, also by the industry. CII is already involved in the Swachh Bharat campaign, and I shall elaborate on this in a subsequent slide. I'd like to mention here that it would be our endeavor to develop sustainable PPP model to provide waste management solution in urban geographies. I'll now move to slide 26. The financial sector is an enabler for all other sectors, and therefore I decided to speak about this separately. It is our belief that the government should encourage the movement of a more diverse financial sector, which reduces the burden on the banking system. There is a need for the government and the financial sector regulators to work in a concerted manner to develop an integrated bond, currency, derivatives market at par with the equity market. Also, the use of cash for monetary transaction in India is amongst the highest in the world. It is hoped that the successful implementation of Jan Dhan Yojana, along with the entry of payment banks, would be a game changer in reducing India's overwhelming for physical cash. Another very important issue is that the non-payment to the EPC contractors. This has compromised the ability of the system to undertake further investments. We believe that a system needs to be evolved by which the genuine dues are settled expeditiously. At CII, we shall be setting up a forum to look into this and provide actionable suggestions. Let me now move to slide 27. Friends, I mentioned at the time of outlining the CII theme that we believe building India is a shared responsibility. So finally, I would like to talk about these very important missions. One on smart cities, one on digital India, and the other on Swachh Bharat. Let me first take up smart cities. While the slide is lucid enough, I would like to mention that CII is taking unique initiatives to bring global experiences and solutions for the enhancing capacity of urban local bodies through Japan, Germany, and the US. CII would take up 3 pilot smart city projects, which would demonstrate the principles espoused by the mission and methodology to implement them on the ground. Next, I turn to slide 28, the CII National Mission on Digital India. Here, our deliverable would be to work with state governments to address the issue of right-of-way, identify best practices, capturing successful pilots under the Digital India initiative in the country, and work towards scale. Pilot projects in 4 villages to demonstrate viable business models in rural area. And lastly, the CII National Mission on Sanitation in Schools, that is Swachh Bharat, Swachh Vidyalaya. CII reaffirms that it would mobilize the corporate sector to significantly contribute and meet to deadlines as stipulated by our Honorable Prime Minister in building toilets in schools. We are closely working with the corporate sector through our own task force and the government. Besides the contribution and participation of CII members and corporates, as an institution, CII itself would be responsible for creating 10,000 toilets. Ladies and gentlemen, this brings me to the end of the presentation. A detailed copy of this presentation will now be handed over to you. I'll just get back to where I'm sitting, and I'll be available for any questions or clarifications that you might have. And of course, I'm going to be supported by Naushad and Chandrajit, who would join me in addressing your issues. May I now request Chandrajit again to conduct the Q&A. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your patient hearing. Thank you.
Should we just move to questions from the floor, please? Yeah, please go ahead.
Mr. Mazumder, let me commence by congratulating you this side.
You want to identify yourself?
Kriti Mishra from Rajya Sabha Television. All this while we've been just talking about luring investors, but the government has decided to press ahead with 40,000 crore tax demand on FIIs. How do you perceive this development, and do you think it would really irk prospective investors?
You want to take that?
As you know, the government's view is that it is trying to put in place a transparent tax system, and it sees this transparent tax system as being a proactive system going forward. It's not meant to address past issues and past claims, right? So the objective is to set in place a tax mechanism that everyone can understand, that is absolutely clear going forward. For past cases, the government's view has been that, look, the law of the land has to take its course. If tax demands have been raised, then those need to be taken to their logical conclusion. That's the perspective that the government has. In terms of its impact, to come to your question, in terms of its impact on investments, I don't think it will actually have an impact on investments in general. Why? Because this is focused on the on FIIs. It's not focused on the broader investment environment. And one should look at the broader investment environment and the many measures that have been taken by the government to make the broader investment environment more attractive, whether it's raising FDI limits in many different sectors, or the very active selling of India that we've seen our Prime Minister engage in very directly around the world. And it's not just public speeches and engagements, but it's these very vital one-on-one meetings that he's been having with leading companies around the world. That really is going to result in a few landmark investments taking place. And as those landmark investments start happening on the ground, they'll become role models for others. So I think the broader investment environment is very positive. It's a very strong move in a much more stronger investment-friendly direction. And I think the FII issue is something that we have to just get over and move on.
I'll just add to that. The government has very clearly said that there'll be no retrospective tax thing. But however, the government does have the right to go back to something if there's something wrong over there. And which I don't think is wrong, because if you have wronged, you can't get away with it. So that is not wrong. But as such, it's not going to be their policy to have retrospective effect. But they still have the right.
And very clearly one believes that, one of the points that the finance minister has talked about earlier, that India is not going to be a tax haven, besides what, the certain tax policy regime that one would follow, but obviously would not let India become a tax haven. Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah. The mic there.
Sir, Rupshri from PTI. I wanted to know, according to you, what are the main irritants to investments that still need to be resolved by the government? Main irritants.
One of them is, I think, the ease of doing business. This is a concern internationally. The domestic investors realize it, how much has changed. But internationally, I don't think we've done enough publicity of how things are changing. But I want to be very clear when I say this, that everything has not been resolved. There are still certain factors which need to be resolved in ease of doing business. And the government is very cognizant of that and is working on it. But this is something that deters investment, and people get worried about it. Am I going to have inordinate delays? Am I going to have problems? And the ease of doing business that we talk about, that's happened really at the higher levels. Now, it hasn't necessarily percolated down the line. So the guy who moves that file may not be on board. So this is a process. The process has started. It's a journey. It's a journey has started. There's no end to it. You will always modify and improve as you go ahead. So we have to do a lot of convincing of foreign investors that things have changed. And we have to also work with the government so that it percolates down the line for people who actually do the job of moving files, understand that this needs to be done.
If I could add a comment also on the ease of doing business and the overall investment environment. First, I think we should expect strong foreign investment to come into the country when we see strong investment taking place by Indian companies. And I think that's where we're starting to see some action now. There's starting to be some upturn in investment as the outlook for the economy improves, and industry sees that outlook for the economy improving. If you look back to the 90s and the mid-2000s also, when we last saw economic growth pick up significantly, we first saw Indian investment and Indian industrial investment grow, and then we saw it follow with foreign investment growing. So I think that's the sequence that we'll see again this year. We'll see sometime between now and the end of this financial year, we'll see industrial investment in India start picking up significantly, and then we'll see foreign investment also pick up as a sequence to that. Second, the ease of doing business, as the President said, the ease of doing business needs to translate into actual change that people see on the ground. And that's not only an issue of what changes with the central government, but what needs to change at the state government and the local government level. So we're working in CII with each of these state governments to see how the states can benchmark themselves one with the other. And first, to start with, just match the best state. Because if each state can match the best state in the country, we move up 50 places in the ease of doing business rankings. We go from 140 to 90 just by each state matching the best state. So that's with no change in law, just with the way in which laws get implemented at the individual state level. That's an area where there's no need for change in law, there's no need for building a consensus of reform. It's the detail of implementing change on the ground, and that's where we're trying to work with each state government to bring about those changes.
You know, I'm going to add something else over here, which is very dear to my heart since, you know, I come from that industry, is the infrastructure. And this is probably going to throw up a lot more questions. Unfortunately, as we know that there is a problem as far as issuing or awarding of infrastructure contracts. While the government may be on one hand clearing projects, but there are not too many takers because we know of the stress balance sheets that most of the people in the infrastructure sector are. And we have to find a solution through this. The government has to work to find a solution, and this is somewhere where we need to do you know, some out of the box thinking. And unless these things, this is an area where investments is very critical also. You are asking the other deterrent, you know, as far as investment is concerned. I think the issue of land continues to be a deterrent. While there is a very practical and a very sensible, doable reform that has been announced by the government, which I'd like to add is definitely not anti-farmer, is very pro-farmer. But for reasons that may be, we all know very well, this is facing problems. And, you know, if this continues to be a problem, it's going to deter investments. So this is something that we are working with the government. Industry needs to work with the government. And this is one other area that also needs addressing. Yes, sir. Sorry.
Hi. You said CII supports ordnance and because it basically makes decision makings faster. The opposition does not agree. Don't you think this strategy could actually derail government's plans to take forward reforms? Because in the coming parliament session, clearly the opposition is not on board regarding ordinances like land.
You know, I don't think it derails it. It was a step that had to be taken to take this forward. Whether the opposition is going to oppose in the Rajya Sabha or what is going to happen, we leave it to that. But at CII, we are really actively working with all the political parties and the states to get them on board and make them understand why this is really, in the long run, good for the country and good for industry, good for development. We have to think about India 20 years from today, 50 years from today. We cannot remain where we are. We need to move forward. So it's good for the country, and we have to propagate it.
Yeah, and I think it should be seen also as a part of the government's commitment to reform and of getting things moving in the economy. And I think everyone is very keen to see that happen, to see the economy move, the growth rate rise. And that's going to happen through some change in sentiment and then a lot of change on the ground. And we're starting to see both happen. And the ordinance route is simply an indication of commitment to reform and a way of moving forward faster. Obviously, all those ordinances need to turn into law within a defined time frame as per our constitution.
And this issue of land has been a big issue. In fact, CII has been talking about it even when the land bill was first brought in, and we had been saying that this would not take India forward, and we had been very strong on that. And since the new government has come in, we have been actually reiterating our very strong views, not only with the central government, but we have been really giving it to the other political parties and also state governments. And therefore, we felt that certain decisions like the land, where the ordinance route was taken, was important for the country as far as quick decision making is concerned.
I'm Tarun from Z Business. At a time when many infrastructure companies are surrendering contracts, there have been declared NPAs. do you think a certain amount of hand-holding by the government in a sincere manner is necessary for getting the sector back on track in the coming 2-3 years? Because the government has talked of 30-40 kilometers a day. How is it possible when companies are first not bidding, second surrendering contracts? So your views on this?
Tarun, you make a very good point, and this is really a problem. Whether it's hand-holding, whether it's through some bond issues or whatever, there has to be some sort of a lifeline given to the good companies. You know, there are good and there are not so good companies. So you can't bail out the not so good companies. Now, how you decide who's a good company and not a good company, you go by track record. So there has to be some innovative solution to this, and this is a matter that, you know, I am very concerned about, and I'm debating it all the time. I'll be honest, I don't have the magic solution. If I had the magic solution, I'd be sitting somewhere else. But there has to be a solution, and through discussion, discourse, and all that, a solution will emerge. You know, it's this 1+ billion people, you can't hold them back. The solution will emerge. Just now, I don't have a solution, but this is the problem, and this requires attention, this requires debate, this requires out-of-the-box thinking.
Yeah. Anyone else? Yes, please. Yeah, please go ahead.
Hi, sir. This is Vikas from the Economic Times. I just wanted to get a sense of your estimates for growth this year. You said that 7.8 to 8.2 is your assessment. Now, I'm assuming this is the new base year that you're using, 2011-12. So I wanted to get a sense on whether industry believes that the current new GDP data really reflects the ground reality in terms of your balance sheets, your market force.
Okay, Vikas, to answer that, yes, I believe industry believes. I'll tell you why. Because we've done an analysis on the new basis of calculation, which by the way is international in nature. 3 years ago, our growth rate was 5 point something on the new basis of calculation. And on the same basis of calculation, we moved to 7 point whatever that is this year, I forget. Based on that, and you know, the announcements that have been made, the FDIs and the actions taken on ease of doing business, we do believe that the growth that we are projecting is definitely achievable. But we have given a band.
Yeah. If that would be all, then we'll conclude the press conference today. And there are many questions which have come up actually on the internet through the webinar, and we would see to it that these are all answered. The CII president would be answering them online or to the respective questioners. We will not use the time of this house to really answer those specific questions at this point in time. But ladies and gentlemen, we'd really like to thank you for your participation and your engagement. I'd like to invite each one of you for lunch, which is served. So thank you very much. Thanks for your presence over here.
I just add my thanks to each one of you for joining us today, and we can do a little bit of catch up over lunch.
Thank you.
Thank you.